overall, where are you with this organization?
Well, number one, I'll say this about the team and the city. The whole mood has changed from, you go back to the last 2-3 years, it's been so negative, so pessimistic, always dumping players. You saw Pajot leave, you saw Stone leave. This is the first summer in a long time where there's a buzz in the city. Like, Ottawa's buzzing, people are happy, season tickets are up 60%. But here's the thing I always say to people. At the beginning of the year, and you guys know this, and we used to say 30 teams, was there now 32 teams? There's 32 happy teams because everyone's in first place. So there's no, it's great and expectations are high, but with the Ottawa Senators, I'm a little more, I'm not going to say pessimistic. I think they're about 2 years, maybe 1.5 from being a really good hockey team. I just think you have to be careful. I think they're going to be a lot better. I think they're going to challenge for a playoff spot. I just don't. You got to be careful because there's that defense, that back end is very young. They're one injury away from being in a lot of trouble back there. Like, you're as much as I like Jake Sanderson, I'm sure you guys saw him play.
Yeah,
he's gonna be one hell of a player, guys. He's the real deal. But I'll tell you from experience, as a defenseman, you need a couple. I'm going to say turns around the block before you get an understanding of really how to play the position in the league. I don't care how good you are; it's just that tough of a position. His learning curve is going to be very quick. He played 22 minutes of the night, but there's a lot of pressure on this kid because if he's not ready to play right now, there's no other options in your top four.
This is not, Yorkie, this is not the way to break in a rookie on defense by speeding up the process.
I agree with you. I agree with you, but has it happened before? Yeah, for sure. You've seen defensemen come in and play really well, and I do think he's going to play really well. I wrote the other day, I think I tweeted it out, I think he's going to be in the Calder conversation. I think he's that good. And he's playing with Travis Hamonic right now. That's my other question mark. And no disrespect to Travis Hamonic. He's had a great career. But he's about, was a year and a half removed from being waived from the entire NHL. Like, he was a top four. Now Ottawa's asking him to be a top four again. Can he do it? Well, I'm not saying he can't. For me, there's a lot of question marks on the blue line. And if those two players can't do what's being asked, I think they're going to be not in a lot of trouble. Like, a lot of teams are in that same predicament. They don't have 6 strong defensemen, but I just think there's a big drop-off if those two can't play. But in saying that, we'll see. It's happened before. The forward group is much improved. I like the additions. DeBrincat's looked excellent. Claude Giroux, I think, is exactly what they needed. Veteran presence, a guy for the young guys to lean on. Forsberg's solid in nets. I like the addition of Talbot. Him getting hurt right off the bat's not going to help. But I think they'll challenge for a playoff spot. I'm just not ready to say that this team is ready to be a playoff team because it's really tough to make the playoffs. We all know that. I think they're going to challenge. At the end of the day, that's what Pierre Dorion wants. He wants to play, the quote is in Ottawa, meaningful games in the spring, and I do agree with that. I think they'll play meaningful hockey down the stretch.
So how do you have a positive season for these young guys if they're not winning? Because I think, there's something about managing expectations that's so important. And going into this, I know a few Senators fans who, feel like they were, launched into the playoff conversation alongside the Bostons and the teams on the cusp of the division. How can this season be positive for them if they're not having success? What do you want to see for results from this Ottawa team if they're not a playoff team to continue to further sort of the development of the prospects?
Well, number one, you want to see Tim Stützle take a big step this year.
Yeah.
I think you saw it. He got off to a really bad start last year. A lot of pressure, high pick. He had a great second half. Number one, you want to see him take a big step this year. Right now, they've got him in a 1A, 1B because they've got 2 top lines they have. And that's a whole other conversation with the whole power play thing. man, I wouldn't want to be close. That's going to be tough. We can talk about that later. But Stützle, for me, I want to see him take a big step. I think if he takes that step and he's got all the tools, I think that's number one. You want to see Thomas Chabot play meaningful hockey games. Since he's been an Ottawa Senator, he hasn't really played in any games where there's been any pressure. It's always been out of the playoffs with a month or two left in the season. So for him, you want to see him playing some pressure, see him take another step in his career. Sanderson, who I mentioned, you want to see him come along and become a top four defenseman. But those are the two for me. And also, too, like, they've got a lot of young guys they've given big contracts to. Matherson, Norris, you want to see those guys continue to get better as players. You want to see Brady Tkachuk continue. And then the rest of the group, Artem Zub, the defenseman, you want to see him continue. He's on a nice track right now. But I like I said earlier, you got to be careful, man. When you all of a sudden say we're going to be a playoff team, we're ready to win right now. Sometimes that's a lot easier said than done, and you got to remember the team on the other side wants to win just as bad as you do. So for me, it begins and ends with the defense, and it's going to be how quickly can some of these young defenders back there, like a Sanderson, become a really good NHL player, and can Travis Hamonic regain that type of player? He used to be a really good player. I don't know what happened in Vancouver, Kyper and Bourne. I don't know what happened, but all of a sudden, no other team in the league wanted him. But Jack Capuano had him in New York back when he was probably playing his best hockey as a pro. They think he can get back to that, and if he can, I think that'll solve a lot of those questions that people have at the blue line.